recorded live.
Okay.
You're listening to WVQC-LP Cincinnati 95.7 FM.
WVQC is supported in part by the Northside Tavern, located at 4163 Hamilton Avenue in the heart of Northside. The Northside Tavern, open until 2:30 a.m., features live music nightly. Call 513-542-3603 to reserve their back room for your special events or find out more about upcoming shows.
This is Kentucky Secretary of State Trey Grayson, and you're listening to the Brian and Joe Radio Show.
WVQC, as a community radio station, serves only to open its airwaves to responsible, divergent points of view. The opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the views of WVQC, Media Bridges, its staff, or its Board of Trustees. The opinions expressed reflect the views of the programmer or their guests. Thanks for listening.
Well, hi, this is Jim Tarbell, and I'm of the Central City universe, and you're listening to the Brian and Radio Show, and all I can say is when you're getting old, when you bend down to tie your shoes, you wonder if there's something else you can do while you're down there.
Up next, I hope you'll enjoy a skit by Pedro Sanchez.
Main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff.
It's Monday, March 1st, 2010, and you're listening to the Brian and Joe Radio Show. On today's show, we talk about lessons from the recession. And our special guest is Thomas J. Fox, the Community Outreach Director at Cambridge Credit Counseling in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And then later on, our legal contributor, Courtney Brooks, talks to us about what to do if you're facing foreclosure. That's all today, live on the Brian and Joe Radio Show from Cincinnati, Massachusetts, and again from New Orleans. You're listening to the Brian and Joe Radio Show on WVQC. Welcome to the Brian and Joe Radio Show. Like I said, your host, Joe Wessels, along with Brian Mueller. How you doing today, Brian?
Great. I'm Brian, and thanks, Joe, for having me from New Orleans again. This is exciting. I'm looking forward to another great show. We want to thank all of our listeners for listening in today. We want to remind them that they can visit our show website online. It's www.brianjoeshow.com. You'll find a lot of information about our current show, upcoming shows, past shows, and you can also get our podcast through our website and find links to all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and find out how to interact with our show. So be sure to visit our website, brianjoeshow.com.
Yeah, we're today. Go ahead. Sorry, Brian.
No, I was just going to add, we do have a listener line also that you can call in on, and that number is 724-444-7444. There's so many fours in there. 724-444-7444, and use the call ID 71029. You can join us. And we're also streaming live on Ustream.tv. If you go there right now, you'll see Joe in the wonderful studios in Cincinnati. So.
Yeah, along with Courtney as well, too. Here, he'll be on the show a little later. And, if you can see us, she's waving right now at the camera. And also, I would say, too, I mentioned this, too, is that if this isn't the way to talk to us live right now, but if you're have a thought on the show later on, you're listening to this as a podcast, you hear it on WVQC tomorrow, 513-443-BJRS. That's 513-443-BJRS, which is the Brian and Joe listener line. So call in, leave us comments, rants, suggestions, want to be a guest, that sort of thing. You can do that.
We do occasionally get some voicemails, some kind of crazy. But
exactly.
Anyway, we're recording. It's a Monday. Typically, we record on a Friday afternoon. But some of our listeners know that in the past weeks we've really been battling because we had a guest from New Zealand on the last show.
Yes, that's right.
New Zealand, New Orleans, and Cincinnati again. So we're always recording from multiple locations. But over the weekend, Joe had sort of a eureka moment. So fortunately, we were able to record our show here this Monday, and hopefully the audio quality is even better. And we're just we'll get some momentum here going. But Before we get too much further, I want to thank our guests for bearing with us through the opening. Joining us today is Thomas J. Fox. He is the Community Outreach Director at Cambridge Credit Counseling Corp. And I believe that's in Agawam, Massachusetts.
I said Cambridge, but I think I was wrong about that.
You did.
No, that's fine.
Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry.
Well,
you said
where is Agawam? Go ahead, Tom. Where is Agawam?
It is Agawam. Agawam, Massachusetts is on the border of Connecticut and Massachusetts. And it was the first zip code ever made in the United States.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Oh, therefore it's
Agawam.
01001 is the zip code.
Yep.
The very first. Oh, interesting. We can say it's the first time we've had a guest who actually is been from the first zip code ever in the U.S. Congratulations, Tom.
Now, how do you say that again? Is it Agawam?
Agawam.
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 And it's
Or
really
as my
close
New
to
York friends
Springfield.
call it, Wigawam.
Wigawam. You're pretty close to the state capital, right? Is that correct?
I'm closer to the Hartford state capital than I am to Boston.
Oh, okay.
But,
I'm sorry. I was
no,
thinking,
it's all right.
but you are close to Springfield. I guess I need to work on my state capitals. I was thinking that the Springfield State Capitol, but that is the home of basketball. Isn't that where the Basketball Hall of Fame is?
Yes, it is. The Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame.
No kidding.
Excellent.
Dr. James
And how's-
Naismith.
Dr. James Naismith, is that who that is?
Yeah, that's right. The guy who invented
Yeah.
basketball while he was working at a YMCA. Why I know this, I have no idea, but true story.
And he developed it at Springfield College.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, right, exactly. Which was the Springfield? Well, never mind. We don't need to get into. That's not why we're here. But it's interesting.
It is interesting. And I should mention that Mr. Fox is an accredited financial counselor. He's also a certified educator in personal finance. He's been the author and creator of several books and DVDs and is a contributor to many websites and magazines. And he co-hosts a weekly radio program called Money America on WAIC in Springfield. That's 91.9 FM. So we're very fortunate to have Thomas J. Fox with us today. And you've already heard a little bit from him. So welcome. Thanks again, Mr. Fox. If we can call you
Thank
Tom,
you, Pat.
we've already had it. Yeah. Today we're talking a little bit about the sort of the financial meltdown of this past year and kind of what that impact is on the average person here in the United States and what they can do. But first, I want our listeners to understand a little bit better what it is that you do as a financial counselor. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what the Cambridge Credit Counseling Corp does?
Well, our goal is to we're a nonprofit agency. Our goal is to educate individuals how to better manage their finances, from credit card debt to just managing your income. And unfortunately, we don't have classes like this in school. There's only 7 states that actually require an educational personal finance as a prerequisite for graduation. And it's kind of challenging. We're kind of thrown into the mix. We get a job, we get money, and they go, have fun, don't mess up.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's also then like credit card companies.
Go ahead,
go ahead and no, it's okay. The credit card companies. As I was talking with a friend of mine the other day, who I won't say who it is, obviously, but he it told me, and it shocked me. They said he's going to have to file for bankruptcy, and we were talking about how it harkens back to college when credit was just handed out left and right. You got a free T-shirt, you signed up for a credit card, and when you're in college, they hand you $3,000 of credit. And that's like a godsend. It's like manna from heaven. And I guess now that is all catching up with us. Tom, is that a fair way to
That's correct. Yeah, the credit card, the new Credit Card Act has changed the way that college students are going to be able to receive credit.
Oh, yeah.
I think the average credit card debt right now for a college student is about $3,300.
Wow.
And the issue there is many don't have a job, so it's difficult. And it is, it's a great, credit cards are a great way to participate in the economic system if you use them correctly. But many of the college kids I talk to, their sense of a financial emergency is, I need a keg and I need 5 pizzas right now.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you certainly live in a college town. I'm sure there's a lot of students in the town that you run into all the time that you see kind of free spending on things, parties and whatnot. But so as a financial counselor, I mean, all the time I'm hearing advertisements on the radio for financial counseling. So obviously this is something that is in high demand. And I mean, is this a new industry? Is this something that's developed in response to sort of the bankruptcy crisis in the United States and financial problems?
Well, the credit counseling industry itself has been around since the 1950s, and it basically started when mortgage companies were seeing foreclosures on the rise, and they said, well, listen, what can we do? How do we get people back in a better financial shape? And they started the credit counseling industry. It changed a lot over the last couple of years, and it's a highly regulated industry at this moment now. There are for-profit companies, and then there's non-profit companies such as Cambridge Credit Counseling. And they both have different ways that they operate, but our main goal is the philosophy of teach a man to fish. If we can get you back in a stabilized pattern, that's our goal. We do offer something called a debt management program. If we find out that someone's in really just tough shape, they can't manage the payments on their own, and we really try to work with credit card companies to reduce interest rates and get monthly payments in a more comfortable pattern so we can get somebody stabilized and get them on a good track going forward.
Well, what's interesting, using this friend again as an example, he told me that he went to a credit counselor, went to a nonprofit credit counseling, which I guess, too, I've heard this before. I don't know the reasons why, but I could maybe guess that people emphasize going to a nonprofit credit counseling service as opposed to the for-profit ones that are out there. I guess there are still a few of those left, but it seems like that message has gotten out there pretty clearly to not use that type of service. Yours is a nonprofit, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So he said that the credit counselor basically told him he needed to file for bankruptcy because he had already called the credit card companies and negotiated with them, and they couldn't do any better negotiations, and he still wasn't able to pay.
No, and that definitely happens. I mean, our goal is to help you identify the best solutions, and sometimes bankruptcy is a good solution. It all depends on the situation, and that's why generally, I try to educate people to call the nonprofit credit counselor because, they're going to work through your situation. They're going to identify what you can handle, what you can't handle, and they'll give you appropriate, kind of goals. Say, listen, bankruptcy is really going to work for you, or listen, we can help you out. We just need to re-strategize some of the way you're spending your income. So it all depends. I mean, our goal, like I said, is we're not trying to get everybody onto a debt management program. That doesn't work with us. I mean, our goal is really to say what's going to help you. And sometimes it's bankruptcy. Sometimes it's some changes in the budget. Sometimes it's some adjustments of income streams. And we get a lot of people, unfortunately. We get thousands of people a month really just kind of, hey, what do I do? How do I handle my situation?
Yeah, and how do you are the credit companies now, and maybe we could talk a little bit about this new credit card law because I think there's some confusion about it, and it sounds like maybe it's not working the way it was intended. But are you finding the credit card companies are still receptive to negotiating contracts, negotiating new terms, I should say, of the contracts of the lease or the lease agreement? I don't know what I'm talking about, but of the credit card terms.
Well, they'll generally tell us what they'll do for people that come to our service. So overall, when a company says, we negotiate with credit card companies, that's not necessarily the truth. Credit card companies say, listen, for anybody using a credit counseling program, we'll do this. We'll lower interest rates to this, and we'll make payments a little bit more comfortable. So we know that going into it. So it's basically a review of someone's expenses, really seeing how things are working. And I think credit card companies right now, with the passage of the law, they're somewhat tentative about how really to move forward. I mean, they're projected to lose, honestly, a third of their income comes from fees, a third of their revenue. So they really have to look at, well, what do we do to survive? I mean, they're always going to survive. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say,
remain profitable.
Yeah. Brian, did you have a question too?
Yeah, I was going to ask, the majority of the people, I guess you call them your customers, the people that come in for the counseling advice, I mean, how do they find you? Is it by phone? Is it by internet? Do they walk into your office? I mean, you guys probably advertise as well.
We do some limited advertising. We get a lot of people that word of mouth is big. Our goal is to really help people. We are on the internet. Our internet website is www.cambridgecredit.org. We do a lot of our counseling over the phone because we're a national organization. Our number is 1-800-897-2200.
Okay,
people can call in there as well, and we'll assign counselors to an individual. And
so you don't have to be
time and energy.
You don't have to be
everything with them.
I'm sorry. You don't have to be in your general neighborhood geographically in order to get your services.
No. Like I said, we service nationwide. We do have a fair amount of people that come into our offices, and we're always happy to sit down with someone. But, some people want to really discuss this in the comfort of their own home. They have their bills in front of them. They're in their comfort zone, and, it's a tough subject. I often, like to say that people that call in are very courageous in a sense. It is difficult to talk about your financial, setbacks. It's a conversation that's you want to have, but you're so tentative about it. Well, what are people going to think? And I think the recession's really changed all of that. It's no more, it's not like I'm alone. It's, well, everybody's in the same boat with me. Let's just get this figured out, and let's get our financial lives moving again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this is certainly a proactive step that you can take, is calling credit counseling. But I just wanted to ask you. You mentioned at the outset here that we don't teach a lot of these skills, personal finance, money management, things like that in school. And I can remember years ago talking to a friend that we should just teach simple skills like balancing your checkbook, or these days really using a program like Quicken in order to manage your finances, knowing what you have. But there definitely seems to be an aspect to this that financial literacy in the management of money is almost a gene for some people, because it seems like certain folks, even with some education experience, just don't seem to get it. It's that intangible that you can't teach some people, perhaps, managing money. Is that what you find as well as you deal with so many people, or are there just some people that just have a rough time understanding it no matter what?
I'll be honest. We my particular education programs, I've run them in universities and correctional facilities throughout the country, and I've always found everybody can get wrap their mind about finances if they, if it's explained correctly. I mean, it's a dry subject. It really is. So, I mean, you've got to take the time and energy to create appropriate curriculum to really resonate with your audience. If you just talk at somebody for an hour about this is your credit, they're going to gloss over. So it's really important the way that you educate people. I mean, Junior Achievement's a great Junior Achievement's a service, a nonprofit also that educates in the school systems from kindergarten through 12th grade, and they really make age-appropriate curriculum to deliver to students, and there's a lot that these kids learn. And I talk to kids later on in life, and they said, "Hey, I went to Junior Achievement, and they taught me this, and I understand how a checking account works and things like that." But it's really, I think it's delivery. I think anybody can learn anything, providing it's delivered in a manner that's that they can get their heads around. Everybody's got a challenge. They've got a life at home. They've got kids and career, and it's just a little time and energy to really sit down with somebody and get them the right information.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, do you get a lot of feedback from your clients as well, saying things like, wow, it's a lot easier than I thought. If I had just been better about X, Y, Z, I may not have gotten into this problem, or what kind of feedback?
That's exactly what I hear. I wish I learned this back in high school. It's probably the first thing I hear from a lot of individuals we sit with. It is a shame that the education isn't out there a lot more, but I think we're going to see some changes to that over the coming years just because of what happened in the economy. A lot of people took on large amounts of debt. They got involved with mortgages that were way beyond their means, and it was, it turned out to be a shootout at the OK Corral over people's money. And the banks, I think that's why they pulled back on their lending, and I think that's why people have been paying down credit card debt at ridiculous rates. Sure. I mean, America's got that thought. Hey, listen, you know what? I've got to take care of me. What can I do? How do I recover from this, the economic downturn, and what can I do to make my future just a little bit brighter?
Mm-hmm. Now, I just have one more quick question, if Joe indulge me here, about your clientele, too. I'm thinking, are you seeing people from all income levels needing credit counseling? I mean, are people coming in that make $20,000 a year, but people coming in that make $200,000 a year, or does it tend to be in a particular economic bracket or income?
It's actually all over the spectrum, and over the last quarter, I'd say it's probably increased with individuals with higher incomes. Their lifestyle was a little bit freer because of their access to credit, but as credit started to, credit card companies started reducing credit lines and things such as that, people started to realize, wow, I'm in a little bit of trouble. I just actually had a friend too. He never really paid attention to his credit card. He said I paid him off, and I can't do that anymore because I've had my income was reduced. His employer reduced his income, and he says, wow, now all of a sudden I'm realizing my credit card payments are $900 a month because I make good money, but that's a big payment each month for me to all my credit cards.
Yeah,
You're having more. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
No, and I think that brings up a good point because a lot of us are in a very precarious situation where we're a paycheck or two from being in major financial disarray.
Oh, indeed. I mean, the savings rate in the country has gone it's gone down and it's gone up. I mean, we were I think at the latter part of 2005, we had a negative 2.7 savings rate in the country. And it's slowly been ticking up, but we've had a recent setback with savings rates. I think it just dropped down again. It was at 4.6% at the end of, 4.2% in December, and now it's in February. It dropped down. January it dropped down to 3.3%. So we're not saving a lot of our earnings, and I think this is where one of the lessons you want to learn from the recession is to build savings, build an emergency fund, have cash on hand. You never know what's going to happen, but cash is king, and it'll help you out each time.
Yeah, no question.
Now, certainly with a more access to credit, you can dig yourself a bigger hole, and maybe that's what some of the people with the higher incomes have been doing over the last year. People with assets too, things like houses and other properties that they can refinance.
That's a fantastic point. I mean, for a long time, people were taking home equity lines of credits and so on, and really kind of pushing forth a lifestyle. I mean, I talked to an individual a couple of years ago as everything started, and he said to me, I got a house, I got 2 brand new cars, but I can't send my kid to college. I don't know why. And I'm like, well, you got a lot of debt, and that's basically what happened. And I think we got so used to the lifestyle of a debtor nation that we kind of lost sight a little bit that savings is important. I mean, we're dwarfed. China, for instance, individuals save 50% of their income. Granted, there's no social programs in China. I mean, there's no unemployment. There's nothing like that. So if I lose my job, I got nothing except for my savings. But India too. India saves 25% of their earnings in India, and America has just been really on that. We've been teetering, under 10%, but we at least try to educate people, save at least 10%. Pay yourself first, a dime out of every dollar, which is something I stole from Sammy Rabbit, which is another great financial literacy program for kids.
What is that called again?
Sammy Rabbit. It's called It's a Habit, ran by a gentleman named Sam Rennick, and he does a lot of great stuff educating kids about it's a habit.com, I think it is.
Uh-huh.
Great website for financial literacy curriculum for kids. And I've been seeing a lot of families saying, hey, you know what, I want to teach my kids now so that when they come to this, when they're older, they don't have to deal with this. And it's scary.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah.
No question about it. I think this is a good – go ahead, Brian. I think this is a good place to take a break if you don't mind. We'll go ahead and do that, and we'll be back on the Brian and Joe Radio Show on WVQC and 95.7 FM. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WVQC LP Cincinnati 95.7 FM.
This is Darren Blaze from Shake It Records, and you're listening to the Brian and Joe Radio Show.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. If you got the money, honey, I've got the time. We'll go honky-tonkin' and we'll have a time. We'll have more fun, baby, all the way down the line. If you've got the money, honey, I've got the time. There ain't no need to tarry.
Welcome back to the Brian and Joe Radio Show. I'm Joe Wessels along with my co-host
Brian Mueller, and I want to remind our listeners.
Oh, I'm sorry. Say that again. Say that. Can you start over, Brian? I had you muted.
I brought it down. I'm Brian Mueller, co-host also of the Brian and Joe Radio Show, and I want to remind our listeners that our show, the Brian and Joe Radio Show, is a radio partnership with the Media Bridges in Cincinnati. We encourage our listeners to support Media Bridges and WVQC by visiting www.wvqc.org. They make a lot of this show possible. Thank you very much to them.
Yes,
Again,
indeed.
We are here with our guest. He is Thomas Fox. He's a Community Outreach Director at Cranebridge Credit Counseling Corp. And before we went to break, we were talking a little bit about his business as a credit counselor and his clientele and some of the issues surrounding the credit crisis in the United States. And as we bring it back here, I would like to ask him a little bit about when people come to you for credit advice. Typically, they're probably in crisis. They may be facing insurmountable bills, calls from creditors, foreclosure perhaps. What is the first thing you do to get them calmed down and sort of right their ship, so to speak?
Well, in the past, it was it was a little bit challenging, really, just trying to educate people that they're not alone. There are a lot of people, unfortunately, in this country that are in the same situation. But since the recession and everything has really held its ground, people are more they're already kind of comfortable when they're calling. They're nervous, but they know that there's help out there. And I think a lot of talk about the credit counseling industry, or just that there's help out there from people. There's financial bloggers that do a great job of really trying to help people out. There's free websites where people can ask their questions of financial professionals, and they'll answer them for free. And there's just a lot of support in the country right now since things have taken a turn, and people are really, they know it. When they call in, they're saying, "Listen, I really need help. I'm probably not in the worst shape. I'm probably not in the best shape. I know there's a lot of people out there in far worse condition than I am, but I do need a little help. I need a little advice."
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the difference between this recession and probably some of the other recessions that I've experienced in my lifetime, and I'm thinking back to the late 70s and the early 80s. Of course, in the early 70s, right when Joe and I would have been very young, there was a huge crisis caused by the oil embargo. But then there have been periodic up and down throughout the 1987 stock crash. The difference is it seems like this recession is much more far-reaching. It's touched a lot more people's lives. Certainly everybody can tell a story about somebody if they haven't been affected personally by this. So, I mean, this is by far the widest. It's the scariest recession I've seen in my lifetime, and I can only imagine those that were alive for the Great Depression probably were reminded of a few things.
Oh, indeed. I mean, I also, venture to say that because of the explosion of the internet, it's also been compounded because people get online and they tweet about what they're going through. People go on Facebook and they're talking about their jobs and they've lost their jobs. So so people are a lot more apt to share nowadays than they have been in the past, which I think kind of when we were talking earlier about how the level of someone's comfort when they call into an agency, they already know that people are in trouble, and the internet has really got a lot of information out there, and it's so it's interesting. It's just a lot of sharing going on. A lot of very people are social about their financial troubles they're going through, and they realize, like I said, they're times are rough. They've been far worse. I grew up with my grandparents, and they lived through the Depression. They did not trust the banks, and when my grandmother passed, God rest her soul, I was pulling up carpets in the house, and I would find $10,000 under the carpets and another $5,000 in the drapes. There was all over the place.
Yeah.
It took us 2 weeks to really look at everything. But yeah, it's scary. But I think people are being hopeful. I think businesses, they actually started contributing a lot more to 401ks recently. So we're seeing some of the, we're seeing people breathing now a little bit. Businesses are breathing a little bit. I think unemployed individuals are starting to see some glimmers of hope. So it's turning around. It's taking a little while, but we'll get there.
Can we talk a little bit about the specific kind of lessons you think that people have learned from this whole thing? I mean, that's the kind of the topic that we're going for today. But what kind of things do people need to take away? What do you think people have learned? I mean, we talked about the Depression, and obviously people learned that they couldn't trust the banks, right? So they started putting cash under the rugs and everything else. What are those the same kind of lessons we need to learn today? Do people need to start hoarding cash in the drapes and under the carpet and everything else, or what do we need to learn?
No, I don't think it's that drastic.
Okay.
I think what people are learning, at least from the individuals I've had the privilege of speaking with, is, these things happen. There are economic downturns, and there's great times of booms as well. But the best offense a good defense, I guess. I've got to have cash on hand. I've really got to pay attention more to the financial obligations I take. I really incorporated in my life. I've really got to build savings. Is probably the biggest one that I hear from individuals is they really got caught with no money, and to deal with a lot of the instances that occur. I mean, like I said, the savings rate is really low. We always tell, before the recession, we would educate people, hey, listen, you want to have between 3 to 6 months of income, of expenses in an emergency fund. And now, since the recession has dug in, we try to say have at least 8 months of income of expenses in a savings account. And people are going, wow, I can't even, I don't have that. So they're starting to realize I've got to build up cash. I really got to pay attention to the future, and I think they're really starting to pay attention more to their retirement funds.
Mm-hmm.
There was a recent article that kind of even scared me. It said that the average American has about $25,000 saved for retirement.
Oh my gosh!
And actually I did a show recently. I was on there with a bunch of 13-year-olds, and it was a kids show, and I'm trying to educate them as to why kids need to worry about retirement now. And they got it because they were like 25,000. That's nothing. And it was funny at the moment, but it is kind of scary. We've lost a lot in our retirement funds. Stock market really took a bad hit, and if things continue the way they are, retirement is going to be one of those things we see in a textbook. 20 years from now, hey, what's that retirement thing you're talking about? Well, people used to take their golden years off and relax. Really?
Yeah.
So
wow.
I think it's a lot. I think people are really starting to pay attention to just the different facets of their financial life a little bit more, and I think it's even going to get increase now that with the Credit Card Act, creditors have to put on, if you make your minimum payment, this is how long you're going to be in debt, and this is how much you're going to have to repay.
Uh-huh.
And I've already gotten phone calls here of people going, what? How much is that?
Yeah.
It's going to take me 2,000 years to pay this.
Are you serious?
Off I got.
Is that exactly? Because I'm curious what you're seeing. Is it really? Are you? What are some examples? Is 2,000 years? I mean, I think that maybe you're joking, but I don't know. That sounds some of these interest rates. That sounds like it might even be plausible. But what are you seeing? How long are people having? How long will it take?
Give me
some
an example. If you've got $2,000 in credit card debt and you're making the minimum monthly payment, you're roughly paying about $41 a month. Now, of that $41 a month, you've got $30 going to the bank for the. This is at an 18% interest rate. Mm-hmm. So now you've got $30 going to the bank for the privilege of borrowing their money in interest, and $11 goes to pay down that $2,000 principal.
Wow.
Now, that takes you about 19 years to repay.
Wow.
Making the minimum payment, and you're going to pay back $5,880 or so. So basically, you're paying $3,800 to borrow $2,000.
Wow, that's good work if you can get it, I guess, huh?
I understand your point right there.
I mean, I'm being facetious, but I mean completely. Because if you're a bank, that's great.
Oh no, it is. I think part of the. And I get a lot of pushback from people, and I try to say, I think a lot of people look at credit cards as they're a right in our country, and they're definitely a privilege.
Yeah.
And you pay for a privilege. And but again, you're a consumer, and you have all the power. You have to shop around. You have to look to see if the card fits your needs.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to see that. But if everything, hey, listen, can I pay this off all in full at month or at the end of the month, or control your spending a little bit with it. So I think people are. That's starting to resonate with people saying, you know what, I do need a credit card for certain aspects of my life, but I could definitely rein it in a little bit. And I think people are starting to do that, especially now by seeing, these things pop up on your monthly statement. You go, wow, that's 19 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My kid's going to college. I don't even have a kid yet, but by the time I pay this off, I'll have a kid and he'll be in college.
Yeah. Wow.
No, Tom, I like the way that you explain things. It really does make sense. I think you have. You certainly have a talent for putting this information out there in a way that's easily accessible and understandable. So if I could distill it to a couple pieces of advice, I mean, really, it's save more of your money and don't spend money you don't have. Is that the two best pieces of advice that you can give people?
Indeed. I mean, it's, and I would also say there's a lot of people out there willing to help. There's a lot of community groups. that offer different kinds of assistance if you're in any kind of trouble. I don't know if you guys have it over by you, but because it's not in every state yet, but the United Way runs a telephone line called 211.
Yeah, we do have that here in Cincinnati.
Oh, you do? Awesome. It's a fantastic service. It really puts people in contact with agencies that can help them, even beyond finance, heat assistance, shelter, whatever it is. And that would be my third piece of advice. Always, look for help. People know times are tough. There's no shame in getting any kind of help whatsoever. We've got unemployment in this country is, over 10%. Real unemployment could be 16%, if they do the numbers right. So you're talking millions and millions of people are in a similar situation. But, yeah, exactly. Don't spend money, save more money. Don't spend money you don't have, and really just look for advice, get educated, and there's plenty of people out there willing to help.
Do you ever find people who just can't stop spending?
There are, and we've come across instances of that, and I've talked to a couple of people too. But that's more of a psychological aspect right there, and that's there are reasons why people do things. There are sometimes those compulsions to do certain things in life, and one of them could be spending. Gambling is obviously another financial issue that we deal with sometimes. And I think people, that's somewhat of a little bit different. I mean, right now we have roughly 85% of the people, wage earners right now, actually have to use their credit cards in order to meet the basic necessities of life. So, that's tough. It's not that they can't stop spending. It's like I'm using this money to survive right now.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult right there to kind of say, well, people can't stop spending. I think they want to. It's just, incomes haven't really risen since 2001, but expenses have gone up. I mean, I just got another increase in my rent, and all that stuff keeps going on around us, but salaries have kind of stayed the same. And in, the downturn, a lot of people have actually had salary reductions, and if they got laid off, they're underemployed, let's say. So it's a challenge right now. I think people are, again, trying to get their footing and realizing, hey, you know what, if I would have did this years ago and I didn't get this mortgage that I couldn't handle, or these credit card debts over my head, and if I saved more money, I'd be in a better shape. So I think again, it's all resonating with people now.
Do you think this new credit card law that went into effect, I think was at the beginning of February, maybe, was it? Is that when it went into effect?
There's some aspects went into effect last year, but the full-blown the Card Act went into effect on February 22nd.
Oh, February 20. Oh, gosh. Okay, 22nd. So, is this working as it was intended? Is it a good thing? There were some news reports that the credit card companies were finding ways around it and loopholes to still make money. And is that still the case, or do you believe that's the case yourself?
Well, I think it was necessary. Again, some the provision I just mentioned about having to put if you make minimum payments on the statements was fantastic. And again, that to me is a fantastic educational tool. Someone sees really how much their debt costs them. But there are some great things came out of it. The universal default, which was something that plagued a lot of consumers, that's been done away with. The interest rate hikes that people can receive, are limited in a sense. There's more time to pay bills, and it's really just the way they restructured it. It was necessary. I don't necessarily know if the credit card companies are finding a way around it, so to speak. But just like any industry, if you're making pizza and they say, well, you can't use this cheese anymore. Well, you're going to close your pizza shop, but you're going to find another way to satisfy, to get your customers the products that they need. In a way that you can still make money. So I think we're going to see some changes as a result of the Credit Card Act. What they're all going to be, I think we're probably going to take a quarter or two to find out, because I think their credit card companies are really going to have to look at what's happening and where their income models have changed. I'm sure these guys have done income projections and so on and so forth, but paper is one thing and real life's another. So I think it's going to take a little time to find out what may change. But they're already talking about bringing back the annual rate for you pay an annual fee for a credit card. Some credit card companies have brought that back. Others are talking about it. And
does that frustrate you as a credit counselor, that kind of behavior, or do you kind of take the side that they're in it to make money too?
I don't pick a side. I basically say, listen, if people are educated, they're going to make their own decision. That's my goal, is to get, as many Americans as possible educated about personal finance. So they say, hey, you know what? This card charges an annual fee of $50. You know what? I don't mind that because the interest rate is at 8%. And if I didn't pay this annual fee, I might have to get a credit card at 19%. But I think if you have the tools, if you have the know-how, the credit card companies can do whatever they want. But again, an educated consumer is more powerful than any credit card company out there.
Okay. So, and then also the bankruptcy laws were changed a few years ago. How is that? What happened? And then is it true that you can't just wipe out debt anymore, or what is that? What's going on with that, and how's that working out?
Well, the bankruptcy laws, when they were changed, they did try to address a lot of issues, with people saying that, hey, they didn't really need to go bankrupt and so on. And they made a lot of changes. I think what really worked against the bankruptcy law was the economic downturn, because, there was literally, after it went into effect, it was a tremendous drop in bankruptcies. But, right now we're seeing, I think, the overall consumer filings for 2009 were 1.4 million. And that's up from 2008, which is 1 million, just a little over 1 million. So we're ticking up there. And mind you, right after this went into effect, there was only 600,000 bankruptcy filings in the period afterwards. So we're really on the uptick, and the only reason we're doing that is because of so many financial strains that people are feeling. The law was changed. I'm sorry.
No, excuse me. If I just interrupt for a second, as far as the bankruptcy is concerned, I had heard before the law change in 2004 regarding bankruptcy that the primary reason for bankruptcy filings in the United States was medical bills. Is that still the case, or has that changed since the change in the law?
I think it's a lot of different things. I'd say more so now. A lot of people I'm talking to is just that they're over their head. It could be a combination of all the bills that are coming into the house, all the credit cards, and unfortunately with the adjustable rate mortgages that are coming due, and the 2.8 million more scheduled to come due this year. People are just saying, I can't manage this, and I'm in over my head. So I think that's why we've seen bankruptcy go up, and it's a little bit trying because bankruptcies, the cost to go bankrupt has increased as well, because there was a lot more, let's say checks and balances that attorneys have to go through now. Honestly, they could lose their ability to practice, being a bankruptcy attorney if they file incorrect. If they try to put someone through bankruptcy who doesn't need to go through it. So the average cost it was like $700 to go bankrupt, and now it could be more than $2,000 because of the increased liability on attorneys. So it's gotten more expensive, and and again, it probably would have, the whole bankruptcy reform would have probably worked if the economic downturn didn't happen. But these people that are filing bankruptcy now are people that really it's designed to be a fresh start. There's no shame in it. The system exists. It's not it's not debtor's prison that there used to be. You're not going to get locked in a stockade for 6 months because you didn't pay your bills. It's a fresh start. It's there to help people. And let's be honest. People we all run into problems. I had when I was younger, I had my credit card issues and things like that, and thankfully I got past it. And I think a lot of people get past it, and they they learn. But it is an option that people can use.
Sure, and I want to ask a little bit more, I guess, about the financial recession, because I think there's another component to this, and I realize that your background is very much in counseling and educating people, but I guess I first started becoming alarmed by things in late 2007, certainly by 2008, when you had I forget which was it Bear Stearns that failed first in March of that year, and then in the summer there were more issues. There was later some of the investment banks, I think it was in September of that year, started failing. And at that point, I got really concerned personally, and I started listening and paying attention to just about as much as I could, and I was listening to news reports and listening to discussions on NPR. And to be honestly, after a while I got burned out, but I actually felt like I had a better understanding of what happened. And from what I can tell with this recession, it did come from the overabundance of credit, and as well as things like derivatives, which were based on ridiculous housing evaluations and home finance loans that should have never gone through, and never checking up on people's incomes. And so there is an aspect to this recession, and probably some of the credit counseling problems that you see that weren't necessarily directly the fault of the people. If that you help. And so it seems to me that there might be another aspect to credit counseling or to fixing some of these financial problems than just educating people. I think there's probably a regulatory element, and we touched on that a little bit with the credit card reform bill. But do you think there's any further reform of finances in the financial markets, our financial system, that needs to happen in order to make sure that people stay out of credit counseling?
But yeah, I mean, it's what you mentioned. I mean, there was a lot of factors that went into the downturn, and probably too numerous to mention. But I think we are going to see some changes. But on the same token, I don't think we want our whole financial lives regulated either. That's why I'm a big advocate for education, because if someone sits down next to you and they go, listen, we're going to get you into a house. It's going to be a $700,000 house. I understand you make $30,000 a year, but we're going to get you no problem. I think if you have financial literacy training and things like that, you go, well, that just don't make sense. A lot of people, and I've seen a case on CNN which is almost similar to that. It was an individual in New York. They received a $700,000 mortgage and they had a $34,000 income.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
You got to know that doesn't work out. But that's again, a colleague of mine used to say there's two types of people in this life. There's people that give you information that's good for you, or people that give you information that's good for them. And a lot of these mortgage companies and things give giving people information that was good for them. Wall Street said sell, sell, sell because I'm going to package these up and put these insurances on it and so on. And a lot of this happened because of the dot-com bust. The bubble burst, and everyone was saying, well, where are we going to make money next? Everything looked really, interest rates were really low, artificially low, and no one was making any money. And they said, hey, you know what? Let's package up these mortgages and sell them off. And they put in well-performing mortgages with subprime mortgages, and that's really where you got, it's the way that they package it all up. They got people in trouble. But on the same token, as for regulation, I think some is going to come out of it. But again, the most regulation I'd like to see is that financial literacy finds its way into the American classroom, and kids educate with it, or get the education to graduate and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to be okay.
Gotcha. Well, so folks, get out there and educate yourself is what you're trying to say.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of resources out there on the Internet and just good community groups, agencies like mine or other nonprofit counseling agencies. There's millions of people in this country at the ready to help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a great place to start might be with Tom's website there at Cambridge Credit Counseling in Agawam, Massachusetts, which is cambridgecredit.org. You can also give them a call, and they help people all around the country at 800-897-2200, 897-2200. Did I say that wrong?
Yep. 897-2200. Yes, I'm sorry.
897-20.
A little bit on me.
I'm sorry. Okay, 1-800-897-2200, and again, cambridgecredit.org. Tom, we'll put a link up to your site on our site so that people can find that.
It.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I really appreciate you being a part of the show today.
No, always just very happy to be on.
Yeah, fantastic. Well,
thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be when you take another break. And Tom, thanks again for joining us. We'll be back with this week's regular contributor, who is Courtney Brooks. She's our resident attorney, and she'll be talking to us a little bit about what happens, I guess, when everything does kind of fall apart and you're facing foreclosure. So you're listening to the Brian and Joe Radio Show on WVQC FM 95.7. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WVQC LP Cincinnati 95.7 FM.
This is the Dean of Cincinnati, Addy, and you're listening to the Brian and Joe Radio Show.
That's too bad. In my dreams, I
Welcome back to the Brian and Joe Radio Show. Money, money, money. Brian?
Money, money, money. Yes.
Very good.
That
I'm
is
always a
the,
little nervous when we come back to make sure that you're still going to be there, but I'm glad that you are still there.
I'm here. I'm sitting here.
Yeah, very good. You're sitting there in New Orleans. And
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say this is a tough thinking about financial markets and things like that. I don't know if a lot of people feel that way, but there's just so much to think about when it comes to finances and what has happened in the last couple of years and stuff. I think it's a really good topic, and the conversation, is never ending. So please send us your feedback. We'd like to hear more from you, and we're going to keep going now. We have another segment about foreclosure, and this is with our regular show contributor, Courtney Brooks, but this is the first time she's been with us on the show. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Brian. How are you? Hey, Joe.
Good. You want to?
Hey, Courtney.
You want to tell Joe? Courtney is sitting with Joe in the Cincinnati studios, but I thought maybe Courtney could start off. Just tell us a little bit about herself, since this is her first time on the program.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I've been an attorney for about 3 years now, and I've worked in real estate for about 5 or 6 years. During law school, before law school, and also after law school, primarily representing builders and developers in construction, development, land acquisition, negotiation, and things like that. However, I have actually also helped out a lot of folks who are facing foreclosure. Being a real estate attorney, I get a lot of referrals from family members, from friends, through my firm to, tell them what to do when they're served with a foreclosure complaint.
Mm-hmm.
So what should you do if you're facing foreclosure?
Well, I think
I say run for the hills, right?
No.
Well, and there's a guy this week too that I kind of.
Down.
Well, no, yeah, I was going to say actually, there was a guy this week who actually bulldozed his house to avoid it being foreclosed.
Wow.
So, do you recommend that officially, Courtney?
Well, it's funny you say that, Joe, because I think most people do run for the hills, but they do it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
They're served with the foreclosure complaint and they just file it away and think it will go away.
Yeah.
They know foreclosure is a process that typically takes a long time. It takes a little bit longer now with recent legislation, so that homeowners have more opportunity to work with their banks to reduce their interest rates, reduce their payments, extend repayment terms, possibly refinance if their credit's in a place that they can do that. But the worst thing you can possibly do when you are faced with foreclosure is to ignore it. Mainly because once you're served with that foreclosure complaint, you are basically being sued in a lawsuit by your lender. You are a defendant in that lawsuit along with your spouse or any other title holders to that property. And you have 28 days after the filing, after being served with the complaint, to respond formally in court. And so that 28-day window is absolutely crucial to prevent a judgment lien from being entered as a default judgment against your property. So the second you receive that complaint to foreclose is the time to act.
And so what are the steps that you go through once you get the foreclosure notice in those 28 days?
Yeah, what happens? Yeah, that's what I want to say is, like, what's the whole process?
Well, you will receive the complaint. It's typically prepared by an attorney. It's going to be prepared by your bank or your, whoever services your mortgage. It's prepared by an attorney. They've performed a title exam. They have done a search for any parties with an interest in the property.
Mm-hmm.
It could be, the government. They could have some tax liens on the property. It could be a homeowners association with some liens filed. It could be a junior mortgagee, another bank if you have a second mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, you have 28 days to respond to that. If you do not respond, a judgment decree will be entered. So what you need to do is you need to either hire an attorney. If you can't afford to do that, contact legal aid in your particular county. Here in Ohio, in Hamilton County, we have legal aid. Wherever you're located, there are resources to help you with this, as Tom suggested. You need to be aware of scams. Most of the time, these self-proclaimed specialists who are going to help you renegotiate your mortgage are charging a hefty fee for services. They're going to get you further into debt. You need to seek out nonprofits, credit counseling agencies like Tom discussed earlier, who really are going to be able to help you if you can't hire an attorney. And at that point, you need to start calling your bank immediately. The second you anticipate a problem, ideally, you would do this before you're even served with a complaint. The second you lose your job, the second you realize, hey, I don't have 3 months or 6 months or whatever they're saying these days to have, in savings in case you would lose your job. So the key is to stay in contact with your bank and be responsive to the court pleadings. Even if you're in contact with your bank and they're telling you, yes, we're going to work with you, you still need to be responsive to the lawsuit because that's its own beast in itself. After the judgment decree issues, the judge is going to file an order of sale, and that's going to be, put on the court's docket within 3 days after the judgment decree. So the process will continue to move along, even if you're in discussions with your bank. So that's why it's important to pay attention to the litigation aspect as well as keep negotiating with your bank after the order. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say now, recently, if you're not going to be able to afford to stay in your home, but you are being responsive to the foreclosure notice and making sure you're in communication, but you know that you're going to have to leave the house, what kind of time frame are you looking at when you're facing foreclosure in order that you're going to have to be out of that property?
Well, Brian, foreclosures can last, anywhere from traditionally about 7 months to a year. Recent legislation passed in various states that has encouraged mediation, more negotiation between the lien holder and the mortgagor, being, the homeowner, is extending that process to allow people to remain in their homes longer. Various banks have homeowner retention programs, but it is typically a 7-month to a year-long process, depending if the foreclosure is contested. Typically, they are not, because the homeowner fails to respond to that initial complaint by filing an answer within that 28-day period.
And if they don't contest, then it typically is even faster?
Correct.
Wow. So, and there's no way to really stop it, I guess. I mean, you have to go, right? You have to get out of your house.
Well, it's a process. After the order of sale issues, the court will order an appraisal. In Ohio.
When do you actually have to leave your house then?
Well, that's further down in the process.
Okay.
That's going to be towards the end. After the final confirmation hearing and your property has been sold, you typically have 30 to 60 days to vacate the premises.
Gotcha. And we only have about 20 seconds left, but what is the big message you want to get out to people, and then how can people find you? I guess we can talk about Twitter or whatever if they want to follow you, but go ahead. And what
my best advice is to seek help early. You have a much greater chance of success in avoiding foreclosure at that point. As soon as you anticipate problems, contact your mortgage servicer and explain your current financial situation.
And legal aid if you can't afford attorney, or contact your attorney if you can't afford one. But correct. I guess if you're in foreclosure, you're probably looking at legal aid.
Absolutely.
And do you know anything about what's going on with legal aid? Are they backed up, or have you heard anything?
It depends on what state, city, county that you're in. A lot of, because of the high number of foreclosures, legal aid is not able to take on the burden of a lot of foreclosures right now, but there are a lot of nonprofit organizations out there like Tom's, Cambridge Credit Counseling Service. I don't know if they work with mortgage companies, but those are definitely available as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, Courtney, thank you very much for being a part of the show. I appreciate it. Great information. Brian, are you still there?
I'm learning.
Oh, you're in some music. I started playing music. Sorry.
I'm burning all your stuff, but that's not enough.
Oh, you know what? I know why. Is that better, Brian?
That is better. All I could hear was music.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, because I forgot there's another pod on you that I have to adjust. So anyway, I'm sorry. We're running out of time. You were just probably being blasted with a little bit of Bare Naked Ladies here. I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Courtney, for your help. And I just wanted to reiterate, Legal Aid is legal-aid.org is their, I believe, national website. So
yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks. I would like to thank Courtney for being our guest, and also then Tom Fox from the Cambridge Counseling Corp and Credit Counseling Service out in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, in Agawam.
In Agawam. Yeah, I'm sorry. I keep saying they're in Agawam. Yeah, not in Cambridge. But anyway, guys, thanks a lot for listening. We'll be on every week at 4 p.m. as a live internet stream. That's on Fridays, which this is today a special exception. We'll be live on WVQC's actual airways very soon. Be sure to visit their website at www.wvqc.org to donate money to keep us on the air. Meanwhile, you'll listen to a rebroadcast of this show on their internet stream as part of the local lunch noon to win every Tuesday on WVQC FM. So, Brian, we're out of time.
All right. Should I mention the Facebook or should I just say,
you know what?
Skip
it. Thank you. We're going to be over time. We're going to be out of time. So just go to brianjoeshow.com and you can find all the stuff about Facebook, Twitter, Ustream, and everything else like that.
See you again in a couple days.
Okay, Brian. Stay tuned. Thanks a lot, Brian. Stay tuned for Lynn Wilson and Hemp Rock Radio. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week with another exciting topic. Brian, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, cool. Let me hang up Talk Shoe here.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it was good. I like
Not a bad show.
Not a bad show at all. Let me hang up.
I thought it was good.